Zira was unlike any other Xyloxian. She was young, inquisitive, and, most notably, prone to questioning the norms that defined her species. Xylox was a planet governed by logic, where efficiency was prized above all else. Emotions were seen as superfluous, a distraction that could impede the smooth functioning of their society. Physical contact, in particular, was only ever used when absolutely necessary, a handshake to seal a transaction or a touch to convey information. Anything beyond that was considered inefficient, and, therefore, unnecessary. Growing up in this environment, Zira excelled as a researcher, embodying the qualities expected of her: sharp intellect, precision in her work, and an ability to detach herself from any emotional entanglements. Her life was one of routine and purpose, devoid of the chaotic feelings that seemed to plague other species. She thrived in her role, contributing valuable data to her community. Yet, there was a lingering curiosity within her, a small, quiet question that she could never quite suppress: could there be more to existence than just efficiency? This question gnawed at Zira, even as she continued her work. It was during one of her routine surveys of the planet's surface that she encountered something, or rather someone, that would begin to unravel the tightly wound fabric of her understanding. A group of human scientists had set up a temporary research station on Xylox. Their presence was unusual, but not entirely unexpected. Humans were known for their insatiable curiosity and their tendency to explore far beyond their home planet. Zira observed them from a distance at first, her keen eyes taking in their strange behaviors. They moved in ways that were inefficient, pausing often to engage in activities that seemed to serve no practical purpose. What puzzled Zira most was their tendency to embrace one another. She watched as one human wrapped their arms around another, holding them close. The gesture seemed to be a form of communication, but it conveyed nothing that Zira could understand. No information was exchanged, no physical task was accomplished. It appeared entirely pointless, yet the humans seemed to find great comfort and joy in the act. This contradiction baffled Zira, who was used to a world where every action had a clear and logical purpose. Intrigued, Zira decided to observe the humans more closely, documenting their behaviors and trying to make sense of this strange ritual. The more she watched, the more fascinated she became. She noticed that the humans often hugged after completing a difficult task or when one of them seemed upset. It was as if the embrace itself had the power to alleviate their distress or enhance their satisfaction. The idea that something so simple could have such a profound effect was both fascinating and bewildering to Zira. Eventually, Zira could no longer contain her curiosity. She needed to understand this behavior, to unravel the mystery of why these humans engaged in such an illogical act. With a mixture of apprehension and determination, she approached the humans. Her appearance was met with cautious curiosity. The humans had not encountered a Xyloxian up close before, and their initial interactions were careful, each party trying to gauge the other's intentions. Zira, in her typically efficient manner, explained that she was a researcher and had been observing their behaviors from afar. She asked them directly about the act of hugging, hoping for a logical explanation that would fit into her understanding of the world. The humans, after a moment of surprise, began to explain. One of the scientists, a woman named Dr. Evans, took it upon herself to describe the concept to Zira. She spoke of how humans used hugs to express emotions: love, comfort, support, and even celebration. Dr. Evans explained that while a hug might not accomplish a tangible task, it played a crucial role in human relationships, reinforcing bonds and providing emotional strength in times of need. Zira listened intently, her mind racing to process this new information. As Dr. Evans spoke, Zira found herself grappling with a concept that was entirely foreign to her. The idea that physical contact could be used not for practical purposes, but to convey something as abstract as emotion, challenged everything she had been taught. Yet, the more she listened, the more she found herself drawn to the idea. There was a warmth in Dr. Evans' voice, a sincerity that made Zira wonder if perhaps there was value in these emotions that her own people had dismissed as irrelevant. Over time, Zira continued her interactions with the human team, but it was Dr. Evans with whom she formed a particular connection. The human scientist seemed genuinely interested in Zira's culture, and was patient in explaining more about human emotions and behaviors. Zira, in turn, shared insights into Xyloxian society, though she found herself increasingly questioning the strictures that had governed her life. The bond between Zira and Dr. Evans grew, with each exchange revealing more about the complexities of human emotion and the reasons behind their customs. Zira found herself not only understanding but also beginning to appreciate the significance of these seemingly illogical acts. Hugging, she learned, was not about efficiency. It was about connection, a way to bridge the gap between individuals and provide comfort in a way that words alone could not. This newfound understanding left Zira with more questions than answers. How could something so fundamentally illogical carry such importance? And more troublingly, what did it mean for her, a being who had lived her entire life by the tenets of logic and efficiency? As Zira pondered these questions, she couldn't shake the feeling that her encounters with the humans, and particularly with Dr. Evans, had set her on a path that would challenge not only her beliefs but the very fabric of Xyloxian society. Dr. Evans sat with Zira in a quiet corner of the research station, the hum of equipment in the background as she began to share stories that Zira had requested to hear, stories of love, friendship, and the importance of family. Dr. Evans began by talking about her childhood, recalling how her parents would hug her every morning before school. "It was a way of saying I care about you without using words," she explained. "That hug would give me comfort and courage for the day ahead." Zira listened, trying to grasp the idea that such a simple act could have such a profound impact on a person's emotions. The scientist then told Zira about her best friend from childhood. They had been inseparable, sharing everything, from secrets to sorrows. When Dr. Evans had lost a pet, her friend was there, offering a silent hug that conveyed more than any words ever could. "That hug didn't solve anything," she said softly, "but it made the pain a little easier to bear." Zira nodded, processing this concept. The idea that a gesture could alleviate emotional pain was both fascinating and perplexing to her. Dr. Evans moved on to stories of her family, recounting how, after a long period of separation, they would embrace each other tightly upon reuniting. "We hugged to celebrate being together again, to feel the connection that we've missed," she explained. Zira could see the warmth in Dr. Evans' eyes as she spoke, a warmth that seemed to extend beyond the physical world into something more abstract and profound. As she listened, Zira found herself increasingly captivated by these stories. Each tale painted a picture of human relationships that was rich with emotions, something Zira had never fully understood. The stories were simple, yet they carried a weight that resonated with her, stirring something within that she couldn't quite identify. Dr. Evans concluded with an anecdote about comforting a colleague who had been going through a difficult time. "Sometimes a hug is all you need to show someone that they're not alone," she said. "It's a way of sharing their burden, even if only for a moment." Zira could see the truth in her words, yet the concept remained foreign to her. The idea that physical contact could convey support and companionship without any exchange of information was almost beyond her comprehension, yet it intrigued her deeply. As the days passed, Zira found herself struggling with feelings she had never experienced before. Emotions, once a distant and irrelevant concept, were now stirring within her. She reflected on her upbringing, the strict teachings of Xyloxian society that had always emphasized the importance of logic and efficiency. Emotions, she had been taught, were distractions, unnecessary and even dangerous. Yet, the humans seemed to thrive on these very feelings, using them to build connections and find strength. Zira began to question the rigid rejection of emotions that her society had instilled in her. If emotions were so detrimental, why did they seem to play such a crucial role in human lives? And why did these stories of love and friendship resonate with her on a level she couldn't fully understand? She pondered these questions, feeling a growing sense of internal conflict. The more Zira thought about it, the more she realized that she wanted to experience these emotions for herself. She wanted to understand the connection that humans felt when they hugged, to see if there was something real behind the stories she had heard. Yet she also knew the potential consequences of such a desire. Her society would likely view her newfound curiosity as a weakness, perhaps even a betrayal of their values. Still, the pull was strong, and Zira couldn't ignore it. This internal struggle consumed her thoughts. On one hand, she was a Xyloxian, trained to suppress emotions and prioritize logic. On the other, she was now deeply curious about the very thing her society rejected. The desire to understand human emotions grew stronger each day, as did the fear of what this newfound curiosity could mean for her place in Xyloxian society. Zira knew that pursuing this path could lead to isolation from her people, yet the thought of turning away from it seemed unbearable. The stories of Dr. Evans and the other humans had awakened something within her, a longing to explore a side of existence that had always been denied to her. As she wrestled with these conflicting feelings, Zira began to realize that she stood at a crossroads, one that could change the course of her life, and perhaps even the course of her entire species. Zira returned to her people with a determination she hadn't felt before. Armed with the knowledge she had gained from the humans, she wanted to share this new understanding of physical affection, particularly hugging, with her fellow Xyloxians. The idea that a simple embrace could convey comfort, support, and connection was something she believed could benefit her society, even if it seemed counterintuitive to their values of logic and efficiency. Gathering a group of her peers, Zira began to explain what she had learned. She spoke of the emotional benefits that the humans had described, how a hug could strengthen bonds, alleviate stress, and foster a sense of unity. Her words were met with confusion. The concept was so alien to them, so far removed from the teachings they had all grown up with, that it bordered on absurdity. They questioned her, some with genuine curiosity, others with clear skepticism. How could an action with no practical outcome be of any value? Zira tried to answer their questions, using the examples she had learned from Dr. Evans. She described how humans used hugs not just as a form of communication, but as a way to share their emotional burdens, to feel connected even in moments of hardship. But her explanations seemed to fall flat. For a species that had long dismissed emotions as unnecessary, the idea of embracing such a practice was almost inconceivable. Despite the resistance, Zira managed to convince a few of her peers to try hugging. The first attempts were awkward and stilted. Two Xyloxians would approach each other with hesitant steps, their movements mechanical and unsure. The initial contact was brief, almost perfunctory, as if they were checking off an item on a list rather than engaging in a meaningful act. The discomfort was palpable, and more than a few of them found the whole exercise laughable. Yet, even in the midst of their discomfort, Zira noticed something. There was a flicker of something new, a tiny crack in the armor of their logic-driven society. A few of the participants, despite their initial reluctance, seemed to sense a faint, unfamiliar warmth in the act. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The process was slow, and the results were mixed, but Zira saw potential where others saw folly. Meanwhile, Zira's relationship with Dr. Evans continued to deepen. The two of them spent more time together, their conversations moving beyond the initial topics of study and research. They began to share more personal thoughts, their discussions filled with a blend of human emotion and Xyloxian curiosity. Zira found herself drawn to Dr. Evans in a way that defied the strict logic of her upbringing. It wasn't just about learning anymore. It was about understanding something far more complex and nuanced. Dr. Evans, too, recognized the bond forming between them. She saw in Zira a curiosity that mirrored her own, a willingness to explore the unknown, even if it meant challenging deeply held beliefs. The more they talked, the more they laughed, the more they learned from each other, the closer they became. Zira began to see Dr. Evans not just as a source of information, but as a friend, a concept that was as new to her as the act of hugging had been. There were moments of conflict as well. Zira's logical nature sometimes clashed with the more emotional perspectives of Dr. Evans. They had differing views on what was most important in various situations, with Zira often defaulting to efficiency and practicality, while Dr. Evans emphasized empathy and understanding. These differences, however, didn't drive them apart. Instead, they served to deepen their connection, each learning to appreciate the other's viewpoint. As their bond grew, Dr. Evans introduced Zira to more advanced concepts of human relationships, trust, intimacy, and even love. These were ideas that Zira had never contemplated in any real sense. They were abstract, difficult to quantify, and even harder to understand. Yet, as she spent more time with Dr. Evans, Zira began to see the value in these concepts, even if she couldn't fully grasp them. Zira's evolving relationship with Dr. Evans blurred the lines between her logical Xyloxian nature and the emotional lessons she was learning. She found herself in a strange, in-between space, where the rigid certainties of her past no longer held sway, and the complexities of human emotion beckoned her forward. It was a journey that she knew would change her, one that had already begun to alter the way she viewed her world and her place within it. The calm routine of the research station was shattered without warning. What had begun as a typical day of exploration and data collection quickly spiraled into chaos. A sudden, violent tremor rocked the ground beneath them, throwing the humans and Zira off balance. The tremors were followed by the sounds of cracking earth and the groaning of structures straining against the upheaval. The planet's surface, normally stable, was now unpredictable and dangerous. Zira's first instinct was to rely on her logical training. Her mind raced through potential solutions, calculating the safest course of action based on the data she had. But in the midst of her calculations, she caught sight of Dr. Evans, who had been thrown to the ground by the force of the tremor. The scientist's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. For a moment Zira hesitated, caught between the logical approach she knew so well and the emotional lessons she had recently begun to understand. The tremors intensified, and part of the research station began to collapse. Zira knew she needed to act quickly. Her logical side urged her to focus on securing the station's critical systems, to prevent further damage. But then she looked at Dr. Evans again, saw the fear and vulnerability in her eyes, and something shifted within her. The memories of the stories Dr. Evans had shared, of how humans used hugs to provide comfort and strength in moments of crisis, came flooding back. In that instant, Zira made a choice. Ignoring the impulse to focus solely on the technical aspects of the situation, she rushed to Dr. Evans' side. Kneeling beside her, Zira hesitated for a heartbeat, then wrapped her arms around the human in a firm, deliberate hug. It was an act that went against everything Zira had been taught, everything her species believed. Yet, as she held Dr. Evans, she felt something unexpected, a sense of connection, of shared strength. Dr. Evans, initially startled by the embrace, quickly relaxed into it. Zira could feel the scientist's trembling subside, her breathing steadying as the fear began to recede. The hug, simple yet profound, was doing what words could not. It was providing comfort and reassurance in a moment of overwhelming fear. In that moment, the logical and emotional parts of Zira's mind seemed to merge, each reinforcing the other. The crisis was far from over, but the hug had given both of them the clarity and calm needed to face it together. Zira helped Dr. Evans to her feet, and they moved quickly to stabilize the situation. The research team, taking cues from Zira and Dr. Evans, worked together to secure the station and protect their equipment. The tremors eventually subsided, leaving the station battered but still standing. After the danger had passed, Zira and Dr. Evans stood together, surveying the damage. The research team had noticed the hug, and though no one said anything immediately, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The team members looked at Zira with a new sense of respect and understanding. They had seen how an action that was entirely foreign to Zira had not only helped save Dr. Evans but had also demonstrated the power of emotional connection in a crisis. Zira herself felt a profound change. The hug, an act she had once considered illogical, had proven to be more than just a simple gesture. It had been a bridge between two worlds, a way to connect on a level that transcended species and cultural differences. She realized that emotions, far from being a weakness, could be a source of strength, something that could enhance logical thinking rather than detract from it. The aftermath of the crisis brought new questions to Zira's mind. How would her people react to what she had done? Could this new understanding of emotions and physical affection be integrated into Xyloxian culture without disrupting the foundation of their society? These were questions without easy answers, but Zira knew she could not ignore them. The act of hugging had changed her, and she sensed it could change her people as well, if they were willing to embrace it. As the humans began repairs on the station, Zira found herself contemplating the future. She had always been a creature of logic, a product of her society's rigid expectations. But now, she was something more, someone who understood the value of emotion, who had seen firsthand how a simple hug could save a life and bring people closer together. And as she stood beside Dr. Evans, she couldn't help but wonder what other lessons humanity might have to teach her, and how those lessons might shape the future of both their species.